The night was cold. Rain poured heavily on the metal roofs of the colony. Wind howled like a wild animal outside. James sat alone in his small cabin, drinking hot tea and trying to fix an old radio. He lived on the edge of the human colony, far from the busy main town. He liked it quiet. But tonight, something felt strange. Suddenly, knock. Knock. James looked up. Who could be out there in this weather? He stood slowly and walked to the door. Another knock came, weaker this time. Then a voice, barely a whisper. Please, help me. James opened the door and froze. A woman stood there, but not a human. Her skin was pale blue. Her silver hair was wet and stuck to her face. Her eyes glowed softly in the dark, full of fear. She wore torn clothes. Her feet were bare, and blood ran down one leg. James didn't move. She looked up at him, her lips shaking. Please, she begged, her voice shaking. Let me stay. Just tonight. James didn't understand why, but his heart hurt seeing her like this. He stepped aside. Come in. She walked in slowly. Her legs were weak. She nearly fell, but James caught her. He helped her to the small couch and gave her a towel. Her hands were cold like ice. You're hurt, James said gently. Let me check your leg. She didn't answer. She just nodded, eyes still on the door like she was afraid something might break in. James cleaned her wound. It wasn't deep, but it looked painful. He gave her one of his clean shirts and a blanket. She wrapped herself in it, shivering. He sat across from her. My name is James, he said. What's yours? She looked at him but didn't speak. Are you running from someone? He asked softly. She looked away. Then she nodded. I won't hurt you, James said. You're safe here. Still, she said nothing. But her hands slowly stopped shaking. James got up and made warm soup. He placed the bowl in front of her. She looked at it like she hadn't seen food in days. Slowly, she picked it up and began to eat. Her hands were still trembling. James watched her quietly. Who was she? What had happened to her? After a while, she finished and put the bowl down. Then she whispered something. Thank you. James smiled. You're welcome. Then, suddenly, her body tilted forward. She gasped and fainted. James rushed to her side. He checked her pulse, still strong, just exhausted. He lifted her gently and placed her on the bed. She was so light, like someone who hadn't eaten properly in a long time. He covered her with more blankets and sat beside her. She whispered in her sleep, words in another language. Then one clear sentence. Don't let them find me. James's eyes narrowed. Who was they? And why was she so afraid? Outside, the rain got louder, but inside the room was quiet. James looked at the strange mark glowing faintly on her wrist. It looked like a symbol, part of a chain. A tracking mark? He leaned back, watching her sleep. He didn't know what trouble had come to his door tonight, but somehow he knew. His life had just changed forever. Morning came slow and gray. James stood at the window, watching the rain turn into fog. His cabin felt different now. Not just because someone else was inside, but because the woman in his bed wasn't human. And something about her scared him, even though she looked broken and helpless. Behind him she stirred. He turned. She was awake, sitting up, her silver hair messy, her glowing eyes watching him like a wild animal watches a stranger. Her face had no trust, only fear. You're safe here, James said quietly. You fainted last night. She looked down at her hands, still shaking slightly. The mark on her wrist glowed faintly again. What is that mark? James asked. She pulled her sleeve down fast. I didn't mean to upset you, he added, raising his hands. Just trying to understand. She said nothing. James walked to the kitchen and returned with a cup of warm water. Drink this. She took it slowly, never looking away from him. What's your name? He asked again. A long silence. Then, she finally spoke. Her voice was soft, tired, and almost broken. Sierra. James nodded. I'm James. This is my place. No one comes here unless they're lost, or running. Her eyes met his, and something in them flickered. Maybe trust, maybe fear. He sat across from her. You were scared last night. You said, don't let them find me. Who's looking for you, Sierra? She hesitated, then spoke in a whisper. Hunters. James blinked. Hunters? You mean bounty hunters? She nodded. I escaped. Escaped from where? She looked away. A ship. A prison ship. James leaned forward. Why were you on it? I don't know if I can trust you, she said quickly. You're human. I gave you shelter, James replied calmly. I bandaged your leg. I didn't turn you in. You came to my door. Remember? Sierra's hands gripped the blanket. Her voice cracked. I didn't do anything wrong, but they marked me like a criminal. I ran because if I didn't, I'd disappear. Forever. James looked at the glowing symbol again. Is that a tracker? She nodded. But it's dying. No signal this far out. Not yet. James stood and walked to a locked drawer. He opened it and took out a small scanner, a leftover tool from his old repair jobs for the colony guard. May I check it? She looked at him for a long moment, then slowly held out her wrist. He scanned it. Beep. The scanner showed one word. Classified target. No crime listed. No reason. Just wanted. James stared at the screen. Whoever's after you, they don't care about justice, do they? No, she whispered. They just want me gone. Why? She shook her head. I can't say yet, but if they find me here, they'll kill me. Maybe you too. James didn't flinch. Then we won't let them find you. Sierra looked at him with wide eyes. Why would you help me? You don't know me. I know enough, James said. You didn't come here to hurt anyone. You came for help. Suddenly a sound. Knock. Knock. Both froze. James motioned for her to stay hidden. She slipped behind the curtain to the bedroom silently. James opened the door a crack. Two strangers stood outside, tall, armored, and definitely not human. We're looking for someone, the taller one said. Have you seen any travelers? James stared at them calmly. No one here but me. They held out a small image, blurry, but clearly Sierra. You sure? The second one asked, voice low. She's dangerous. James narrowed his eyes. No, haven't seen her. The hunters glanced around, but James's place was too simple, too small. We'll be watching, the taller one said before they walked off into the fog. James closed the door slowly. Sierra stepped out from the curtain, her face pale. They're here already. Yes, James said, but they don't know you're here, not yet. She looked at him with fear. They won't stop. James nodded. Then neither will I. Night had fallen again. James lit a small oil lamp. He didn't use bright lights, too risky now. The fog outside had grown thicker. It wrapped around the cabin like a warning. Inside, Sierra sat by the small heater, her knees pulled close to her chest. Her glowing eyes kept shifting toward the door. James watched her quietly. He could tell she hadn't slept. Not really. Not since the hunters showed up that morning. You can rest, he said softly. You're safe for now. Sierra shook her head. You don't know them. They don't give up. James nodded. Then we stay one step ahead. He sat near her, holding the scanner that had detected her tracker. He stared at it for a while. I might be able to disable the mark, he said. Not remove it, but jam the signal completely. Her eyes widened. Can you really? He shrugged. I fixed fighter engines before I fixed radios. It'll hurt though. She looked down at her wrist. Do it. James got up, brought out a toolkit, and sat beside her. Hold still. The metal device hummed as it touched her skin. Sparks flickered. Her body tensed, jaw clenched tight. She didn't cry out, but her eyes filled with tears. Then, beep. The signal bar vanished from the scanner. It's done, James whispered. She breathed out slowly, still shaking. Before either of them could speak, the lamp flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. James stood up fast. Something was outside. Moving. Tap, tap, tap. On the window. Sierra froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. James reached for the shotgun hanging near the door. He moved slowly, his heart thumping. He peeked through the side curtain. Nothing. Then, crash. The back door burst open. James turned fast but saw no one. Only wind, cold, dust. He stepped into the back hallway, slowly. Then he saw it, a small device lying on the ground, a listening bot. Cracked, still buzzing. He picked it up, crushed it in, his hand. They sent a spy drone, he said, returning to the main room. They know someone's here. Sierra was already standing. We have to leave. Not yet. We still have time. Suddenly, bang, bang. Someone knocked on the front door again, but this time it wasn't weak. James pointed to the bedroom. Hide! Sierra vanished behind the curtain. James opened the door halfway, just enough. It was one of the hunters again, the shorter one, helmet off. His red eyes gleamed. Evening, the hunter said calmly. We're scanning homes again. Colony rules. Open check. James raised an eyebrow. Since when? The hunter smirked. Since now. He tried to push the door. James stepped in the way. I have a right to deny entry unless there's a signed warrant. The hunter narrowed his eyes. You seem nervous, human. Or maybe I just don't like uninvited guests. A long pause. Then the hunter smiled slowly. You smell like fear, he said, but not your own. James didn't move. The hunter turned away, walking into the fog, but just before vanishing he said, We'll be back, and next time we won't knock. James shut the door hard. He turned to find Sierra peeking from behind the curtain. They know, she whispered. James nodded. They're toying with us, like predators. What do we do? He looked at her, then at the scanner, the broken bot, and the packed bags in the corner. We don't wait, he said. We run, tonight. The night was still dark when James loaded the last bag onto his old rover. Fog crawled across the ground like ghostly fingers. In the back seat, Sierra sat quietly, wrapped in a long coat. James had given her. Her eyes stared out the window, but her mind was far away. James started the engine. It growled to life, old but loyal, just like him. We'll take the old canyon road, he said. No patrols there. Sierra didn't answer. She just nodded. For the first hour they drove in silence. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the wind whistling outside. Then Sierra spoke. You deserve the truth. James looked at her, surprised. Sierra didn't look back. She stared ahead, eyes glowing faintly. I was not always hunted, she said. I was once respected, feared even. I served in the royal guard of my homeworld. James didn't interrupt. I was trusted. I had command, weapons, orders. Her voice was calm, but behind it was something heavy. Guilt. One day, I received an order. We were told to burn a rebel village, said they were hiding criminals, but there were only families there, mothers, children, starving people with no weapons. James gripped the wheel tighter. I refused, she continued. I told my captain I wouldn't do it. He laughed and gave the order anyway. She paused. Her hands trembled in her lap. So I turned on them. I freed the prisoners, helped them escape. She stopped, swallowed hard. I even shot one of my own officers to protect a child. James looked at her. That child, was it yours? She hesitated. Yes. My son. James said nothing. The pieces began to connect. They took him after they caught me, she said, voice thin. Stripped me of my title, called me a traitor, put me on a prison ship, said my son would be re-educated. James's jaw clenched. That's not justice. Sierra shook her head. No, it's punishment for caring. A long silence followed. Then James spoke. You didn't just run to survive. You're trying to find your son. She nodded slowly. I don't even know if he's still alive, but I have to believe he is. It's all I have left. James looked at the road. We'll find him. Sierra turned to him sharply. Why? Why are you helping me? You could have turned me in and gotten a reward. James smiled a little. Maybe because I've been alone too long. Maybe because I believe in second chances. Or maybe... He looked at her. Because no one else did. For the first time, Sierra's lips curved into a soft, sad smile. You're strange for a human, she said. James laughed. I've heard that before. Just then, the scanner on the dashboard beeped. James tapped it. A small red dot blinked. What is that? Sierra asked, her voice tense. Movement. Behind us. She stiffened. They're following. James pushed the rover harder, speeding through the winding trail. Dust rose. Stones jumped under the tires. We need cover, James said. There's an abandoned fuel station 2 miles ahead, Sierra said. I saw it on the map. James nodded and didn't slow down. The dot on the scanner blinked again. Closer. They're getting faster, she said. James narrowed his eyes. Then so are we. 20 minutes later, they pulled behind a collapsed building with rusty towers and broken walls. James killed the engine. Silence. Sierra peeked through a crack in the wall. A small flyer hovered far away, searching. They haven't found us yet, she said. James sat beside her, catching his breath. Thank you, she said quietly, for not asking me to leave. I wouldn't throw someone out just because they're broken, he said. She turned to him, eyes shining in the dark. I'm not broken, she said firmly. James smiled. I know, he replied. You're still fighting? Sierra nodded. And I won't stop, not until I hold my son again. By morning, the fog had faded, but danger had not. James stood beside the rover, checking the engine. Sierra crouched nearby, watching the horizon through a cracked pair of old binoculars. Her sharp alien vision caught something James couldn't. Scouts, she said softly. 2 of them. Same insignia. Same hunters. James didn't look up. Are they headed here? No? Not yet, but they're close. Too close. James sighed. Then it's time we stop running and start chasing. Sierra turned to him. Chasing? He closed the engine panel and walked toward her, holding a worn-out tablet. I cracked the ship data cache from that drone they left behind. It had fragments of communication, a delivery route, coordinates. Her eyes narrowed. Coordinates for what? For a transfer site. A place where they sometimes move high-value prisoners. Not far, maybe 2 days if we cut through the rocky zone. Sierra stood slowly. That might be where they're keeping him. James nodded. We won't know until we get there, but it's the first real lead. She hesitated. That zone is harsh. There are acid vents, storm pockets, even cave creatures. James gave her a small grin. Then let's pack snacks. The journey was hard. They traveled by day, hiding the rover with camo netting each night. The sun in this part of the planet was stronger, the air drier. Every mile tested the rover's old wheels and their patience. Sierra sat quietly most of the time, eyes scanning constantly, alert to every sound. James finally asked, "What's his name?" She blinked, as if pulled from a dream. "My son?" she asked softly. James nodded. "Kyle," she said. "It means light from the dark in my language." James smiled. "Good name." For the first time, Sierra looked less like a soldier and more like a mother. Her hand moved slowly to her necklace, a small crystal hanging by a frayed cord. He gave this to me before they took him, she said. It was from his first gathering hunt. James studied the crystal. Looks like it could power half a ship. Sierra laughed softly. He said the same. Then her smile faded. He was brave, but he was only a child. James didn't say anything, he just drove. That night they camped under a cave ledge. The stars above were red and purple, alien skies full of unknown stories. James started a small fire using recycled fuel. Sierra sat, across from him, warming her hands. She finally spoke again. I wasn't a good mother, she whispered. James looked up. Why would you say that? I chose duty over him for years, she said. I told myself I was protecting him by keeping him distant, but when he needed me most, I was too late. James tossed a stick into the fire. You're here now, he said. You're walking across a poisoned desert and dodging bounty hunters for him. That sounds like a good mother to me. She didn't answer, but he saw the tears in her eyes reflect the firelight. By the second day, they reached the ridge. Below it, hidden by the curve of the land, was a small outpost. No flag, no banners, just metal walls and a few lights. But, to Sierra, it was unmistakable. That's one of their transport points, she said. That's where they keep prisoners before shipping them off. James pulled out his scanner. Heat signatures show about 8 guards. She clenched her fists. Then I'll go in. No, James said. We go in. Sierra turned to him, startled. You don't have to risk. I already did, he said. Might as well finish the job. They made their plan carefully. James would create a distraction near the fence, lure out half the guards. Sierra would slip in through the drainage tunnel, find the holding cells, and look for any sign of Kale. They both knew the risk, but they didn't speak about failure. Only hope, as you. They crouched behind a boulder. Ready to move, Sierra touched James's shoulder. If I don't make it back, she said, find Kale. Tell him I fought to the end. James looked at her. If one of us isn't coming back, it's not going to be you. The fortress stood like a beast asleep on the edge of a volcanic plain. Black stone walls, cracked and scorched by fire, stretched high into the smoky sky. Glowing rivers of molten lava flowed nearby, casting an eerie orange light that flickered, like ghosts. James and Sierra crouched behind a rocky ridge, staring up at the guarded gates. The air was thick with heat and danger. This place, Sierra whispered, is called the Fortress of Fire. It's where they keep the most dangerous prisoners. And my son. James's heart tightened. He glanced at Sierra's pale face, shining with sweat. We don't have much time, he said. The guards change shift in 10 minutes. Sierra nodded. Then we move now. They slipped down the ridge and ran low toward a side entrance. James carried a small bag filled with gadgets, homemade EMP grenades, hacking tools, and old explosives. Sierra's hand gripped a compact energy pistol. Her glowing eyes scanned every shadow. Near the gate, 2 guards stood chatting, careless in the thick heat. James raised his hand. He pressed a button on a small device. A soft beep followed by a flash of light burst from the grenade. The guards froze. Then their weapons sparked and died. The EMP grenade worked. Sierra didn't wait. She dashed forward, kicking open the heavy metal door. Inside, the fortress was a maze of dark hallways and steel doors. The air smelled of smoke and sweat. A low hum of machines filled the space. James followed, his scanner lighting the way. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. They've noticed us, James shouted. Sierra ran faster. Keep up. They turned a corner and found the holding cells, small cages with thick bars. Shadows moved inside. Sierra's eyes searched every face. Kyle, she whispered. No answer. Then, a weak cry. Sierra hurried to the last cell. Inside, a small boy with blue skin and glowing eyes, just like her, sat on the cold floor. Kyle, she cried, rushing forward. The boy looked up, his eyes wide and scared. Mother? His voice was soft. Tears filled Sierra's eyes. I'm here, Kyle, I'm here, James stood guard, scanning for threats. Suddenly, footsteps pounded the hallway. "Guards, we have to go!" James yelled. Sierra grabbed Kyle's small hand. James threw a smoke grenade, filling the hall with thick fog. They ran. The fortress shook, with explosions as James set charges behind them. Outside, lava flowed closer. James shouted, "Jump!" They leapt over a broken bridge just as fire and stone crashed down. Breathing hard, they raced toward the rover. Sierra held Kale close. "We're safe now," she whispered. James smiled, though his body ached. The fortress burned behind them, but their fight was far from over. The stars shone brightly above the small colony as James drove the rover through the quiet streets. Sierra sat beside him, clutching Kale close. The boy was asleep now, peaceful for the first time in months. James glanced at her. She looked tired, more than tired, worn down by pain and fear, but her eyes held a quiet strength. They arrived at the small cabin at the edge of the colony. James helped Sierra and Kale inside. The warmth of the fire filled the room, chasing away the cold shadows of the past. Sierra sat down carefully, her hand still holding Kale's. James watched her quietly, unsure what to say. Finally, she spoke softly, her voice trembling. "Thank you, James, for everything." James shook his head. "You don't have to thank me. You did all the hard work." Sierra smiled sadly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You saved my son, and me." She looked down at Kyle, who stirred and opened his eyes. The boy blinked up at James and smiled weakly. "Papa," he whispered. James's heart skipped. Sierra's eyes filled with tears. "He calls you Papa." James knelt beside them. "I'll be here for both of you." For a long moment, they just sat together in silence. Then Sierra looked up, her voice small but hopeful. "I came to your door, scared and alone, begging to stay." She reached out and took James's hand. "Now, I want to ask." James waited. "May I stay? Forever?" James smiled gently. "You already do." Outside, the stars sparkled as if they knew a new story was beginning. One of hope, family, and a future built together.